if you're happy and you know it, how do you tell people that you know it? How do you describe being a happy person? How do you describe everything in your life? Do you use positive words or negative words? And do you have words that you absolutely love? And are there words that you just don't like, or they bring a thought into your head that you don't like to have in your head? And I'm asking the question because my least favourite word is average. I hate it because by definition it means somewhere between the worst and the best. And obviously if you're at your worst you tend to make changes, and I don't even like the word best. It's not one of my other least favourite words, because I think that once you get to best, if you think you're the best, then you stop growing and you stop getting better. So one of my favourite words is better, but I don't like the word best. And the reason I'm asking is vocabulary is such an important thing. And the reason for that, and all of the experts that have anything to do with brain health and brain mental strength and toughness, is that we get to choose our words. So it doesn't matter, nobody can tell you what to say and nobody can tell you what to think. You get to control that. But the obvious connection after that is I get to choose my words, I get to choose my thoughts. My thoughts then control my hormonal system, control my actions, because I'm telling my brain what to think. Isn't that awesome? You get to tell your own brain what it should be thinking. Then your thoughts then control your actions, and of course your actions will have certain outcomes, certain consequences, positive or negative. So if I'm using negative words, if I'm feeding negative words and thoughts into my brain, whether they come from somebody else or they come from myself, it's going to have a negative effect on my actions, which would then have a negative effect on my results. So I'm asking very personally, because there could be, if you don't love your life, if you're not happy every day, if you don't have great people in your life, if you don't have a career or business that you love, if you haven't got high self-esteem, if you're not confident, if you're not attracting great people into your life, could the disconnection, or could the tiny little thing that you have to change be to change your vocabulary? And I'm asking that with passion and enthusiasm, and something to please consider, because I work with every day, experience every day, people who are really unhappy, and I'm sure that you do too. People, and literally, the Romax is here for those 4 reasons. Have a healthy, fit, strong body, have a career or business that you love, be financially free, and have great people in your life. And the reason that I'm so committed to that is because every day I experience people who are living the opposite. People who are unhealthy, unfit, out of shape, and feel terrible. They've got no energy, they're tired and lethargic. People who hate their job or their business. People who are not financially free, they're stuck financially, they're struggling for money. And people who have terrible relationships. And there's a whole heap of strategies to make that better. But ultimately, I'm standing here this afternoon and in my begging position to please consider that even if you're the happiest person in your world, I'm sure you know people who aren't happy. And there are people in your world for sure who aren't healthy, fit and strong, who may not have a career or business that they love. They don't have financial freedom and they don't have great people in their life, or they have all of that as a combination. What a horrible way to live. What if the change, what if the turning point, what if the way to make your life completely different was simply to change your vocabulary? And I use this very basic example, but it's the most obvious one to me. If I say I can't, so I tell my own brain I can't, or somebody else tells me I can't and I believe them, I can't do it now. If I believe that I can't, I definitely cannot. I've told my own brain, you can't, switch off, won't happen. If I say, how can I? It's a simple vocabulary change, but what if that was the only one that you did today? So from this day forward, instead of ever saying, I can't do that, you just say, well, how can I do that? Your brain has no other option than to search for a way, because you've told it to you've asked it, how can I? You've told it what to do. And your brain is amazing. It collects everything. We can't unlearn something. We can't unhear something. It collects everything we do. And now your own brain goes into brainstorming mode to find out, how can I? So if you say, I can't do that, you can't. If you say, how can I? Your brain starts looking for a way for you to do that. Such a simple change of vocabulary. If you say, I can't afford it, you definitely can't and you'll never get it. But if you say, how can I afford it? Your brain goes into solution finding mode for you, and now you can brainstorm with your own brain to come up with a solution to the challenge that you think you can't afford it, but if you ask, how can I? Well, then you actually could. Something as simple as that tiny little change could make such a big difference in your life. If you are constantly saying negative stuff, how could we possibly think positively? If you're putting negative music into your brain, if you're putting other people's negative words into your brain, so that might come from the radio, from the news, from your next door neighbour, from your family. And there's this great quote about if you have poison in your coffee, you'll die, regardless of who puts it in there. So the quote is, watch your coffee, because somebody who loves you could still tell you negative things. Somebody in your life who loves you still might say, you can't do that, it's not possible. You take that information in, you believe it, and now you can't do it. And that's just not true, because everything that's ever been achieved was once considered impossible. So whatever it is that you want to do, ask your brain, how can I? Now, the other one that's really interesting, and simple vocabulary change. I know that already. If you've ever heard yourself say that, I know that already, what happens to your brain's ability to learn more? And I'll go a step further. If I'm not learning anything, how can I grow? How can I get better? How can I get stronger, fitter, wiser? If I know that already, my brain shuts off and says, okay, well, don't listen because we know that already. Really? How about I don't know that, or I want to know more? And I always joke about this because I've got blonde hair and I'm an old lady and I'm going to keep my blonde hair because I want to keep learning. And it seems that when you have blonde hair, people think that maybe you're not very smart, so they teach you stuff. And I want to keep learning. So and I'll put them both together. The two things that I've completely taken out of my vocabulary is I can't do that and I know that already. And if you were to ask me, did that have a change or an effect on your life, or how did it change your life? Then my answer would be completely. Because every time I've said to myself, I can't do it, I'm right, it's true, and I can't. Every time I've asked my brain, how can I do that? I go into brainstorming mode. My brain does that for me. And that's the beautiful thing about the central nervous system and the endocrine system and how the brain works. It can't help itself. You've asked it to do something and it will. And I'll give you the neuroscientist example of that. If I say, red wagon wheel with black tyres, you can see it in the background. But even if you close your eyes and I say red wagon wheel, you will be able to see one of those because the brain thinks in pictures. Now, the example that the neuroscientist always uses is something like a pink teddy bear or a purple giraffe. If I ask you, think of a purple giraffe, your brain will do that for you. It can't help it. You've told it to. It's easy. What if you just stop the negative words and replace them with the positive words? Instead of using negative words, and we get the choice. So if we're using negative words, we could end up being negative people, creating negative actions with negative outcomes. If we decide to use positive words, positive thoughts, create positive actions, now we may or may not get positive outcomes. Sometimes you can say all the positive words, all of them, and you can be doing positive things and shit still happens. But the ultimate thing there is if bad stuff happens, if shit happens, I can now use the words I want to use to describe that situation. So instead of saying shit happens, I can say, well, how can I learn from this? How can I grow from it? How can I get better from it, rather than being miserable and depressed and angry about it? And again, I get to choose my words. So one of the reasons I'm standing out here this evening is I'm in my garden where I had to make some decisions about how I was going to put my garden together, because this is one of the windiest places in New Zealand. And everybody said to me, you can't have a garden in the central Otago. It's the windiest place in New Zealand. It's the hottest, it's the coldest. Things just don't grow well there. You'll have to have a greenhouse or a hot house, or you'll have to grow plants inside. You just can't have a garden. Well, I don't buy into that word, so I didn't say I can't do that. I went, how can I do that? So consequently, I have rocks and I have plastic plants and I have interesting pieces of wood. I have all different kinds of rocks, small ones, big ones, brown ones, white ones, grey ones, a whole heap of different stuff. And everything in this garden has become windproof because when it blows here, it's 100, the big day we had was 160 kilometres an hour, which is gale force winds. So instead of saying I can't, I said how can I? Now, I love flowers. Growing flowers out here, everybody said to me, impossible, you can't have flowers. But I have tulips and I have, which yellow tulips are my favourite flowers. I have sunflowers, I have daffodils. They're just plastic, but they look amazing and I love them. And I'm sharing that with you. It's just a simple example of if somebody says you can't and you believe them, they will be right and you will be right. But if you say to yourself, I can and how can I, now you can brainstorm. Now, if you invest time with people that don't say can't, and you have people in your life who always say, hey, how can we? Now you've got people to brainstorm with. And that's that great quote and a great suggestion. Brainstorm with people who have a brain that's open to learning, that's not impossible. And that beautiful word impossible is simply two words together, I'm possible. If I decide I can do it, then I'm possible, not impossible. Let's make it happen. So if you want to change your life, could it be as simple as changing your vocabulary? And I use, as you know, simple things like magical day instead of Monday. I say a strong end instead of weekend, because week to me is a negative word. I don't use the word traffic because it's a word that has a connotation of yuck. I like that there's cars on the road because it means that the country's doing well and people are moving about and things are happening. If there were no cars on the road, that would be interesting. So I get to choose my vocabulary, so do you. That then leads also to a reputation. And if you're constantly using negative words and saying negative things and people ask you how you are and you tell them that you're terrible, you end up with a reputation of being a negative person. But worse than that, even if other people think you're negative, if all the words that you're using are negative, so if somebody says to you, how are you? And you say, I'm sick, I'm tired, I've got a sore foot, I'm miserable. Now you're going to be really challenged because you're telling yourself that. And if you tell yourself that you're sick and you're tired and you're miserable and you're grumpy and you're depressed, your brain has no choice but to agree with you. So you will be. If you wake up and say, I'm fat, you will have a fat day. If you wake up and say, I feel depressed, you will have a depressing day. If you wake up and say, my life is terrible, your day today will be terrible, if not for the rest of your life. Isn't that just simple? But what if it's the reverse? Even if you're not happy, why not say, and it's not telling lies, it's just telling the truth in advance. I feel fantastic today, I'm going to have an awesome day. Now you might not, but you're more likely if you use different words. So how about consider, if you want to live your life to the max, if you want to have a great day every day, could it be a really good idea to use negative or drop the negative words off, use positive words, change your vocabulary because you get to choose your words, you get to choose your thoughts control your actions and your actions usually control your outcome. Now the things that we have no control over, like the weather, like the negative things that other people say to us, we have a choice now to say, I'm either not going to listen to that, and my favourite thing to do there is smile, nod and walk away. You don't have to agree with people that tell you that you can't do it. You get to decide. Isn't it awesome being an adult? You get to decide. So live your life to the max, using the most positive words to create a positive outcome. Wouldn't that be awesome? Oh, what a beautiful evening. Oh, what a beautiful day. I get to choose all the words that I say. Woohoo!